Okay, so yesterday I had mentioned to you that, or we had seen the Imrei Yaakov, who says that the Shach, who's one of the preeminent commentaries on Choshen Mishpat and Yoredeya, had given a summation of all the laws of Shlishut, of being a custodian or an escrow over watching over documents and cash when you've been assigned as the third-party escrow company. So I downloaded it, and I wanted to share it with you because it contains some good stuff. Okay, let me just see here. Just got to bring it up. Here we are. And let's take this out. Take this. I'll share the screen in just a sec. Share. There we go. Okay, can everyone see this? Shach Choshen Mishpat Siman Nun Vav Sifkat Lamed Daled. Dine Shlishut Ha'olim Yisiman Zeh. The laws of Shlishut, of being an escrow holder, that come out of this whole chapter. So he's got 22 halachos that come out of this. So maybe we'll start it and see if we find it meaningful. Aleph, Shlish Neman Kishnei Edim, Bizman Shah Shlishut Yotze Mitachas Yado. So the first rule is, and the Rav Stern had alluded to this, is that so long as the custodian is holding on to either the documents or the cash, then his believability is like two witnesses. Even if one of the litigants, even if one of the two parties who are in conflict, creditor, the debtor, the buyer, the seller, even if they were to bring a witness to contradict the escrow, that would not be admissible. And this, if there's a contradictory witness, the shlish would not even have to take an oath. He's just automatically believed like two witnesses. Afilu hashlishu karovo pasul, and that's true even if the shlish is a relative of either of the litigants. Afilu ein lo migu, even if he doesn't have any kind of powerful argument. Kagon shuhu bidvarim hasuyim lahashilu lahaskir veru ata biyad hashlish. So, for example, even if it's an item that normally does it is lent and rented out, and so it could very well be that this item in his possession came to him for some other reason other than holding on to it.
Crows?
Looks like it froze.
Yeah, crows.
Sorry, I lost you, but we are back. Let me just share.
Okay, we're back.
Yeah, we're back. Sorry about that, folks. Thank you, Mordechai. So I'm just going to plug us into the network, so hopefully it won't be a problem. So, okay. So the shlish is even believed to say that, I'm sorry, but I forgot to include one of the conditions in the escrow documents. Even And furthermore, states, I don't know why the network is not taking to the cable. I don't know why. He still nonetheless believed to say that I know there's one condition written in the shtar, but another two conditions were added later on, and they're not in writing, which gives, oh, there it is. So that gives a huge amount of believability to the custodian. He can even claim that there were additional conditions that were later added to the escrow instructions that are not currently in print, even if they're not in writing. He's believed, and the reason ostensibly is I guess because he's believed to be a completely objective party since he was trusted by both parties. Gimel. Afilu over zman hashlishut shehaya lo lahachzir leechad mehem v'lo hechziro adayin shlishu. Let's say the terms of the escrow were that after 6 months he has to return the money or the documents to one of the parties, and he hasn't done so yet. So long as the items are in his possession, he is still considered the shlish. V'davka shahadavar shayach me'atzmo le'echad mehen, aval misha hashlish taro biyad echad, shiyasa lo pshara odin adzman ploni ve'over hazman below asa. Oh, but that's only if that the money, let's say, is liable to one of the two parties after those 6 months. But let's say the money was deposited with the escrow for the purpose of negotiating a settlement. And the agreement was that it had to be negotiated by a certain time, and that time has elapsed, and there's still no settlement. Yachzir lo shtaro, kivin shuhuchrach lifsok din opshara v'lo amar klum b'toch hazman kvar nispatel das hashlish. He says, if let's say someone was hired as an escrow person, but also to hold on to the money and then to come up with a settlement, to do an arbitration that would involve really more of a mediation that the two parties would be able to accept. And they said that you have 3 weeks to come up with a mediation between the two of us. And if not, you have to return all of the items back to us. And we'll, so then he has to, if the time elapses, the 3 weeks elapses and he's not able to mediate properly, then he has to return all of the items back to the people who gave it to him. The only time that we say that an escrow person is believed like two witnesses is when there are witnesses who can testify that he was appointed as the escrow company, or that the two litigants themselves acknowledge that he was appointed as the escrow. Aval ima shlish omer shlish asisani litain davar zeli ploni, v'hu omer lo ki ela hapikadon hu shehipkadeti biyadcha. But let's say there's a dispute as follows. The escrow person says, I was appointed to hold on to this until such and such a date. And at such and such a date, I'm supposed to deliver this money to Shimon. And Reuven claims that's not true. I gave you this item to watch over it and then to give it back to me when you were done with it. Now you're telling me that you were appointed by me to deliver it to somebody else? That's not true. Afilu hashlishu kasher sarachu lishava neged hatovea osal. Even if the shlish has no outstanding reason to suspect him, he still has to take an oath against someone who claims against him. In other words, if Reuven is claiming in court that I never agreed that you would be my custodian, I gave you some documents to hold on to them because I was going on a trip, and now I want you to give them back to me, or I gave you cash to hold on to, or I gave you an item to hold on to. I never gave you instructions to deliver it to Plony. to Shimon. So therefore, the shlish has no believability unless he has a stronger claim where he can claim a migu, that I could have claimed this, but I didn't. So therefore, or maybe he could say, I don't know what you're talking about. This item is mine. You never gave it to me. And the shlish then becomes a party of interest and he cannot testify. Okay, so it goes on and on like this. I'm not sure if we should go through all 22 items, but it basically has a whole bunch of different rules as to when the escrow person is believed, when he's not believed, how he, when he should give it in front of Beis Din, when he shouldn't give it in front of Beis Din, and so forth and so on. So I think we've seen a lot of these halachas already in the Imrei Yaakov, so I think we're going to go on, okay, if that's okay with everybody. Hold on just 1 second. Yeah, no, I'm not going to do a poll. I'm just trying to figure out, let's see, how stop the share. And let me now share the Imrei Yaakov screen. There we go. Okay, so back to the Imrei Yaakov. Okay. So we're on the page 20, and then we're going to go to the new packet. Let me just see where we were. Okay, so we're up to Mem Vav. That's what we're up to. Now, V'im shachach inyan hashlishut al eze tenai hushlash biyado. Let's say a guy was appointed as an escrow holder, and he forgot, nothing was put in writing. Both parties said to him, here are the escrow instructions. And now he forgot what the instructions were. And there's a conflict as to what exactly the instructions were. Lo yachzir, lo lazeh velo lazeh, ad sheyavo Eliyahu. You should not return the cash or whatever else you're holding to either party until Eliyahu Hanavi comes. In other words, basically, you have to hold on to it until it's clarified what your instructions were. If there's a conflict between the two. In other words, Ruvain says, I only authorized you, or let's say Shimon is the debtor, let's say, for example. And or Ruvain is the creditor, Shimon's the debtor. Ruvain had given a promissory note to the escrow holder, and because once Shimon gave him partial payment, let's say, on the debt, and Shimon said, give it to Levi, he'll hold on to the promissory note, and if I don't pay you by February 1st, I hereby instruct Levi to give you back the promissory note for the full amount that you can still collect it. And that's what Reuven claims. And Shimon says, I said no such thing. I simply said to hold on to it because I'm going to come up with the balance, the extra $70,000, because I only paid you $30,000. I'll come up with the extra $70,000 by February 1st. But I didn't say, and if I don't come up with it, you can give him back his promissory note. I said that if I don't come up with it, then you can, then I'll pay a penalty, but not that you can give him back the full amount, so you can collect the full $30,000 again. So he says if there's a conflict and the guy simply doesn't remember, so then he has to hold on to the paper until Eliyahu Hanavi comes. Correct. So they'll have to go to Beis Din. Well, the debtor is still acknowledging that he owes the $70,000. No. We're not saying he doesn't have to pay. They'll take it to Beis Din. the Beis Din will still hold him liable. No one's contesting that he owes him $70,000. The question is, does the creditor have a right to collect a second time the 30,000? That's the only issue right. That's the only issue that's being contested. So that'll have to go to Beis Din. Beis Din will have to write up a new promissory note and put together a whole package to make sure that Reuben can collect the 70,000. But yeah. Right. V'chein hamotzei shtar chov etzlo ve'eino yodea mativo im hamalve hifkido etzlo halova. Also, let's say, here's another case. Let's say you find a promissory note in your possession. Let's say Rabbi Karapkin finds a promissory note in his possession, and he knows it's two of his members. It basically says like Mordechai owes Doug $100,000. Okay, there you go. So, and I don't know whether Mordechai gave me the note or Doug gave me the note, because I'm not sure whether the debt was paid, whether it was partially paid. I have no idea how I got this. It happened on Purim. They gave me this note. They told me, Rabbi, you're in charge of it, okay? And I have no recollection. Okay. Oh, im hifkiduhu etzlo b'torah shlishus u'miktaso parua. He says, I have no idea who gave it to me. I have no idea if they gave it to me because part of it had been paid or not. Lo yachzir lo lazeh v'lo lazeh. Then I have no halachic right to give it back either to Mordechai or to Doug. The im hechzir avar al divrei chachamim. And if I do, then I'm in violation of the edict of the sages. V'chein yorshei hanifkad lo yachziru shum shtar shenimtza b'rishus aviyim ela im kain yodim ativa. And furthermore, let's say a person passes away and he was an escrow company. He had an escrow company. And now his heirs come along, they go through his papers, and they discover all of these documents, these legal documents. But they don't know what the proper instructions were made to him. So they cannot return these documents to either party until they know precisely under what circumstances these papers were given to their father. So right. It would have to go to Beis Din. Beis Din would summon both parties and try to come to some resolution as to what's going on. Okay. Ad sheyavo Eliyahu. So take a look at the Imrei Yaakov. If you don't remember what the instructions were, you have to hold on to the paper until Eliyahu Hanavi comes. The im amar hashlish achar kach shenizkar ne'eman va'osin kidvarav. Let's say later the shlish says, "Oh, now I remember. Something jogged my memory. Now I remember." So then he is believed, and we would follow his recollection. See, normally when it comes to testimony, if a witness says, that he's cross-examined, and he says, "I don't remember," or "I don't know," he cannot later change his testimony and say, "Oh, I just remembered." That's not admissible in Beis Din. Once you say, I don't know, you can't retract the "I don't know" and say that you do know. But with an escrow person, because he's of a different nature, he's not a witness. He's a neutral party that was appointed by both the plaintiff and the defendant. His power of testimony and recollection is amplified, and therefore he can say, even if at one point he forgot, but then he goes back and he thinks it through and he says, "Oh, now I remember. This is what I'm supposed to do." We do admit that, and we go according to his recollection. Okay. So let's go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If there's no dispute between the two of the litigants, then of course the escrow person has to relinquish the documents. Even if he doesn't remember, but they're able to settle things between them and they say, yeah. Well, I mean, presumably the guy will watch it, will protect it and make sure it doesn't get into the wrong hands. That's essentially what we're saying. Make sure that it doesn't get into the wrong hands if you don't know if you don't know what's going on. Okay, Mem Zayin. V'chein hadin b'chol zeh b'shtar mechira umatana. He says this halacha is true in any legal document, whether it's a bill of sale or a bill of gift. Ki afal pi shelo shayach bahen piraon. He says if a third party is entrusted with a bill of sale, he says even though there's no concern that maybe the item was only he says, in other words, with a loan, you have to be concerned that a promissory note should not get back into the hand of the creditor if you already collected it. You don't have that concern with a bill of sale. He says, Yesh lachush lahamlacha shema nimlach hamakna milahaknos v'hifkid ashtar biyadzeh. But you still shouldn't give the bill of sale to the buyer automatically if you don't remember the details, because maybe the reason why the bill of sale was given to you was because the seller was equivocating whether or not to sell the item. He wasn't sure. He wasn't completely committed to selling the item. So he drew up a bill of sale and he told the escrow person, listen, I'm not fully committed to selling this item yet. You hold on to the bill of sale. Let's see if this guy can come up with the cash, or let's see if his credit is good. I got to do a credit check or whatever it is. You hold on to the bill of sale until we verify it. And then once I do my due diligence, then if I'm satisfied, I'll authorize you to give the bill of sale to the buyer, and then he can take possession of the goods. So therefore, just because you find a bill of sale in your possession that says that Shimon purchased from Reuven doesn't mean you automatically should give that to Shimon, because maybe, or let's say you find something on the street, right, that says a guy bought something. It sounds like you shouldn't automatically give it to the name to the buyer. Okay. Sha'az yitlenu miyadav yitnenu liyad halokeach, or mekabel matana, or let's say the same thing with a bill of gift. Maybe I was not sure whether I should give my grandson, my new car, right? And I wanted to see whether he was going to behave himself. I wanted to see if he was going to be a mensch, or whatever it was going to be. So, and that's why I gave it to this guy. And now he doesn't remember what the terms were. So, va'achshav lo kanu adayim lakach, achshav lo kanu adayim. And maybe there was no kinyan in the bill of sale or the bill of gift. Maybe the transaction never took place, and I'm waiting to check his credit or to see other things. And therefore, if the seller says to the escrow guy where he finds this document, he says, I didn't tell you to give this to Shimon as a bill of sale. I told you to hold on to it until I give you further instructions. Therefore, you have to listen to the seller and not give it to the buyer until you verified what the circumstances really are. Let's take a look at the Imrei Yaakov here. Kuf Pei Hey. V'chein adin b'chol zeh b'shtar mechira matana. Rotzolomar di imitzam etzlo. Ve'eni yodea mativa mimanosin hifkiru o makabel. In other words, if you find a bill of sale in your papers and you don't know how you got it, you don't know what the circumstances were, whether the buyer gave it to you, whether the seller gave it to you, you hold on to it until you verify the facts. Okay, next, Memches. Bamed dvarim amurim b'shtar she'ein bo kinyan sudar. Aval im yesh bo kinyan sudar v'ushtar mechira o matana. He says, the aforementioned only applies when the shtar does not record a transaction. But let's say within the shtar it says, V'kanina min, that a transaction is hereby recorded in the shtar, where the witnesses who signed the shtar basically also testify that at the time of the consummation of the shtar, there was a kinyan. And the kinyan basically, therefore, makes it a valid sale, right? V'hushtar mechira o matana, shelo shayach behen piraon. And there's no concern that it was only partial payment or whatever, because it clearly shows that transaction was made, that Ruvain gave it over or transferred ownership from himself to Shimon. So then, yachzirenu lahalokecho lahamakabel matana. Then you should certainly give the bill of sale or the bill of gift to the recipient. Lefisha misha'a shekanu miyadu nischayev, v'hashtar eno elo l'raya. He says, because if the shtar is recording that the transaction took place, then it's clear that the item is now the property of the buyer or the recipient, and the function of the shtar is only to prove that point. And therefore, you should certainly give it to the buyer. And that's only true, but that's only true if you don't know who gave you the shtar. But if you know that the seller asked you to hold on to this bill of sale, even though the shtar records that a transaction took place, but the seller did not tell you what to do with the bill of sale. And now he's not here for me to ask him, kagon shemes, such as, let's say, he passed away. You should still not give it to Shimon, even though the shtar indicates that Ruvain sold the item to Shimon and there was a kinyan. Why? Ki shema hisna im ha'edim shekanu miyado sheyitnu hashtar liyado v'lo liyad mi shehikna lo kidei shetiya habarera adain biyado v'lo gamar v'hikna. He says the reason is that if I clearly remember that even though the shtar records that Ruvain sold his car to Shimon, but Ruvain was the one who gave me the bill of sale. Now, why would Ruvain give me the bill of sale if he already sold the car to Shimon? Once the transaction is made, bill of sale goes to the buyer. It doesn't go to the seller. Why did the seller hold on to the bill of sale? And why did he ask me to hold on to it for him? I don't know any of the other circumstances. So if, let's say, Ruvain passes away and Shimon says, give me the bill of sale because the car is mine and I need to prove it in Beis Din, I should not give Shimon the bill of sale if I clearly remember that Ruvain gave it to me and asked me to hold on to it, and that's all I know. And the reason is because even though the shtar records that a transaction took place, but it's altogether possible that Ruvain did not consummate the kinyan with full intent. He says it's possible kishema hisna im ha'edim shekanu miyado sheyitnu hashtar liyado v'lo liyad mi shehiknalo. Because maybe the negotiation was, you edim, I'm making a kinyan with you, which will signify that I am selling or transferring ownership from of this car from myself to Shimon. But I'm not doing it with a full heart. So after the transaction is done, give me back the bill of sale. And I'll decide later whether I want it to go through or not. Maybe he didn't transact it with a full heart. We'll have to finish this Mirz Hashem later. Rabbi Isai, just to repeat, I'm going to be out of town all of next week. So we will resume a week from Monday. So you have a break for the next week. Let me wish you a good Shabbos and a good week, and we'll see you, Mirz Hashem, a week from Monday. Have a great Shabbos, everybody.